We're good. It's going to silence them. They'll feel that they don't have to be victims anymore out on the street. Well, I'm not really concerned about being victimized by a bad guy. I am infinitely more concerned about being victimized by my government. When we talk about being victimized by our government, we're not talking about a handgun and a concealed carry permit, are we? We're talking about the larger issue of the right to keep and bear arms. And for a long time, the government has been attempting to take away or severely restrict our access to those tools that could be used, if necessary, to set things right in this country in relationship to government conduct, or should I say misconduct. And we seem to be having possibly a bit of a reversal. Not too many months ago, there was a decision out of the Federal First Circuit Court of Appeals called Parker. And it was an absolutely stunning decision in a positive sense. The First Circuit Court of Appeals held that the Washington, D.C. gun ban was unconstitutional. Absolutely. And in the court's opinion, they reviewed the history of the right to keep and bear arms all the way back to England before the colonies. They went from that point and they moved forward, reviewing the history, because does not a right that pre-existed the formation of government need to be examined in a historical light? Absolutely. These three judges did exactly that. And they essentially said this: the right to keep and bear arms is the right to defend yourself, your property, your family, your community, your state, and if need be, the nation. I don't think we're defending our states or our nations with handguns. Their decision read plainly, without future judges saying, well, it must mean this and it must mean that, read plainly, if it prevails nationwide, because the District of Columbia has appealed the case to the U.S. Supreme Court, if it prevails at the United States Supreme Court, it's going to set gun control measures back probably 50 years. I thought it was interesting and a little amusing that as I was reading through the decision, they said it appears that the only regulatory control that the government really has over your right to keep and bear arms is concealed carry. And the authority for that was a court case. So a lawyer in a black robe apparently said that someday. And because he said that 150 years ago, now every court since then have said, oh, well, it's appropriate for us to regulate concealed carry. As I said earlier, I think your right to conceal carry is your birthright as an American, or carry in whatever mode you'd like. So when we look at the income tax, we look at the silence of the government. When we look at the government's misconduct, it's affront to liberty, it's theft of property, it's intimidation. I thought Lynn Meredith, how many remember Lynn Meredith? Keep her in your prayers at all times, thank you. One of Lynn's point was how many people have died of the income tax? Many. Too many. So when we look at government abuse, the unlawful seizures, putting people in jail without ever having to demonstrate what the law is or where it is or how it applies to you, I really think ultimately the government has two choices. It can stop misapplying the income tax and brutalizing the American people by choice, or regrettably, at some point, they are going to stop misapplying the income tax and brutalizing people, probably on quite a number of levels, because we start killing them. And I don't mean that as a reactionary extremist point of view. If I'm reactionary and extremist, then so was George Washington. So was Tom Jefferson. I'm sorry? So was Barry Goldwater. Thank you. I do consider myself a Goldwater conservative. I appreciate that. So the question becomes, what do we do today? What do we do right now? Well, the tax honesty movement, in my opinion, has made tremendous progress. Let me explain what I mean by that. Earlier today, I was speaking to Larry Becraft, and we acknowledged that the government has been very successful at muzzling or dismantling what we might call the tax honesty leadership. Through injunctions or through trials ruining people financially, putting them in jail, such as Irwin. They have been very successful at that. However, my experience at my office is that the message about the non-taxpayer status and the income tax, that information, is getting out and is growing exponentially, and I think we owe Aaron Russo a huge debt of gratitude for that. So it is my hope that in time, if the message is indeed growing, as I believe it is, that the right to keep and bear arms will once again merely be a vanguard that we do not have to resort to. But when I started talking about the right to keep and bear arms today, I said the best deterrent is 50 million armed people who are willing to kill government officials. Okay. I don't know how many of you are involved in the right to keep and bear arms. Obviously, I hear great support for it. But I'd like to parrot here today something I often say on my radio show. If you don't own combat-grade handguns, rifles, and you haven't trained, you haven't learned how to use them, I think today is the day for you to do that. Not because we have any desire to hurt another human being, because I truly don't. Not because we desire to go down that path. I don't think anyone in this room really wants to go there. And I think the results of that would be up in the air, and no one can predict what the results of that would be. But I think that deterrent factor is extremely important. And I think as the word of the income tax gets out, people start talking about 9/11, they start talking about other issues, and they learn that the government is lying to them, and that the government is not their friend. As an ever-growing segment of the society starts viewing the government in that light, the government's going to find itself in a difficult place. And what do governments do when they find themselves in a difficult place? They clamp down. So I think today is the day when we commit to exactly what the Founding Fathers felt and believed when they spoke of the right to keep and bear arms. It wasn't an esoteric concept. It wasn't just to defend yourself on the road from bad guys. It was meant to secure the liberty of a nation. And it may still, even now, when people can't even imagine in their minds in 2007 that it could still be used that way. If the government takes the wrong path, we may find that the right to keep and bear arms is the only thing that once again, 200 plus years later, protects the liberty of our nation. Thank you very much.